Welcome to Dubai for this week's episode of Trailblazers. I'm Jenna Barter, and today I'm thrilled to be here at the Ismaili Centre Dubai, talking to Rahim Daya. Rahim is the head of Barclays Private Bank Middle East, based in Dubai. He's responsible for the management and development of Barclays Bank's Middle East strategy to deliver growth across the region. In addition to holding a Bachelor of Science from City University and Cass Business School in the UK, Rahim is an alumni of the London Business School's Executive Education Programme. Prior to moving to Dubai, he has held a number of roles within private banking across the UK and Europe. Thank you so much for joining me today as we learn more about Rahim's journey and his passion for banking and drumming. I know we're all looking forward to this chat today. We're here today with Rahim Daya. Welcome to the Ismaili Centre Dubai, where it's so sunny. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jenna.
It's our pleasure on behalf of Trailblazers to welcome you. I'm not sure personally if I'm more excited about the fact that you are the head of Barclays Private Bank or the fact that you're the drummer for Kayal.
The drummer bit's more interesting.
We'll talk about that one a bit later then. So, firstly, I wanted to know a bit more about how you ended up in your current role as the head of Private Bank Barclays Middle East.
Thanks, Jenna. Thank you, Trailblazers, for having me. It's a real honor.
Pleasure.
To spend time with you today. I joined Barclays towards the end of 2010, so just after the financial crisis, or we were in the recovery period of the financial crisis. I joined with a particular mandate, and my focus at the time was just to deliver that mandate. I didn't have a view on what my 10-year path looked like. I didn't have a view on where I wanted to end up. I had a very strong view that I will do my absolute best, I'll work hard, and I will create opportunities and maximize them as they arose. And that's what I did. So I focused, I delivered, and after 10 and a bit years, we're sitting here talking about my career.
Wonderful, wonderful. And what about your, early influences and role models? Tell me a bit more about that.
So I guess the main influences at a very early stage is your family, right?
Of course.
I think there were 3 or 4 things that were very clear as I look back on early influences. The first was that there was really no distinction between how much effort or time you spend in your professional life and your community life.
Okay.
So there was always a very genuine balance between what we did for the Jamaat and what we did outside. And sometimes perhaps too much balance, the other way. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing was, I don't recall growing up in a pressure cooker type environment where all focus was on exam results or ensuring a particular career path. There was space to learn, try things, figure out what you liked, what you disliked. So I think that was also really important. The third thing was really around focusing on self, right? So there was never, certainly I don't recall anyway, there was never really a focus on what others are doing.
Okay.
There was a very strong focus on what do we do and how do we do it and how do we just get better.
Got it.
And I think that's helped me throughout my time. I'm sure we can talk about that later. And the final point that I recall was, with whatever you have, be very generous with it.
Yeah.
And that's the fun part, right?
Yeah, that's the fun part.
That's cool. But I think from an early influencer stage, those are the 3 or 4 things that I take.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned that being in an environment that wasn't high pressure has enabled you now to deal with high pressure, because you never felt
For sure.
almost like, that pressure cooker environment, you didn't feel it. So now you're able to apply that and deal with a lot of pressure, which
Yep.
is something we'll talk about later. What exactly is your favorite thing about your job right now?
Look, I'm in a great part of the world, looking after a business that is very interesting. It's exciting because it changes a lot. The markets here are volatile. And ultimately I run a decent sized team across Barclays that is meaningful and relevant. I work with some great people, and not only in my current role, but in general, I've been very fortunate to have a good set of people around me, right? So, from super senior to super junior,
Yeah.
I've been able to kind of grab the right elements, that I needed, and focus. So yeah, look, there are many things that I genuinely enjoy about what I do today.
That's perfect. It's always good to enjoy what you're doing, right? That's
Yeah.
that's
Or I wouldn't
important.
do it.
Exactly. So now that we've learned a bit about your career and your path to getting to where you are now, I'd like to explore a couple of other topics with you. Leadership. It's something which has been highly debated. People have their own opinions on, their own views. What's your view of leadership? What are your observations or key lessons?
For me, I think the major element is, or the major duty a leader has is to instill confidence and conviction in the team. So I think being really clear about what's expected, what's then delivered, and what success looks like is super important, and holding people to account.
Okay.
So my style is very much along those lines. I try and be very transparent about what I'm trying to achieve. I have high conviction with regard to what what I want to achieve, and it's very clear to those how we deliver it. Accountability is really, really important, and I think calling people out when things are not being executed is important. So I'm very transparent and very direct in that sense, and that's helped me build a business, and equally it's helped me build teams.
Okay, interesting. And I'd love to learn a bit more about how you're building teams in a couple of minutes,
Sure.
if that's okay. And in terms of seeing an example of leadership that's really impacted you, or that you've been able to learn from, do you have any personal examples or professional examples?
Look, there are many examples.
Of course.
I think the best examples are those that bring together 3 or 4 different I think dimensions. I think leadership during the last kind of 12 and 15 months has been paramount. I think how people engage with their teams remotely. I think how people showed empathy. I think how people showed the same amount of confidence and conviction in building business was equally important. But you needed 3 or 4 dimensions to come together. And that was really important over the last year or so.
Yeah, and like you said, it sounds almost like the adaptability and the flexibility with leadership. So different dimensions and changing as the times change.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And also, Rahim, I know that you're, as the head of a private bank, probably dealing with a lot of pressure on a daily basis. And we touched that earlier in terms of you not feeling phased, essentially. The word unflappable comes to mind when you talk about that. Now, do you have any specific strategies with how you deal with it, or any advice to the viewers on how you deal with high pressure environments?
The first thing I'd say is, I have a genuine view that, nothing's a big deal.
Nothing's too big.
So the way I digest the situation is quite straightforward. I will focus on what the situation is. I will spend time understanding it. I will spend time focusing on what I can control as part of that situation. And I will invest a disproportionate amount of my time in trying to influence what I can control. When I do that, it means that I can be focused on the task at hand rather than being focused on what I can't control and what I can't influence. So that's kind of how I manage pressure myself. And that's what I try and extend to the team as well.
Yeah. So you're essentially saying that you don't even look at the things that you can't control. You almost ignore them, put them to the side.
You have to park them.
Yeah. Park them. That's a good way. Staying in your lane, essentially,
Correct.
Right? Doing the things that you can do and leaving the rest to some other power or being that can handle it.
Yeah.
And what about, work-life balance? It kind of brings me on to the subject of how do you deal with work-life balance? Is that important to you? Tell us a bit more about the way you see that.
Yeah, look, I don't think I'm the best example of balance.
Fair enough.
But look, I'm not a big socialite. The time, when I'm not working, I'm with my family. I have a wife and a 2-year-old. We like hanging out together. We'll basically spend a lot of time as a family. and that's the perfect combination for me.
Yeah. So for you, you're able to balance out the work and the pressure at work, maybe with spending time with your family.
Yeah.
And I think, also we mentioned the idea that you have been the drummer of Khayal, and I believe you still are. Yeah. How's that going for you? And is it bringing you balance in your life?
Yeah, look, I'm told that we're about to approach a 20-year anniversary, so
20th.
It's going okay.
That's something. That's something.
Yeah, look, music's been another early influence.
Yeah.
And something that I'm incredibly passionate about. And music can really remove you from reality, even for just a few minutes. So I listen to a lot of music. Look, as for the band, a few of us, kind of got together a few years ago. We were a bit underwhelmed by the quality of the bands that were performing in the UK. And a few of us, one is a guy that I used to DJ with at university, then I've got some friends and others, we said, look guys, we are all really passionate about music. We're not musicians necessarily,
right,
by trade, but we share an equal passion, and we have the equivalent passion for serving our Jamaat. So, building the band was the perfect outcome, right? Because we get to do things that we love, and we're able to do it for the Jamaat. Someone was mentioned to me the other day that in the last however many years we will have performed to somewhere in the region of 300,000 people across the globe.
Huge.
It's a huge number. I wouldn't have thought it would be that big, but
yeah.
That's what someone told me.
Yeah. And I guess it was, again, another high pressure environment. I mean, you're performing all around the world, you're traveling, you're dealing with large audiences. And I think your strategy, again, for dealing with pressure comes in here. Focus on what you can control.
There was one particular gig. It was in Nairobi, I think 2000, I want to say 4 or 5. I think it was 5. And I think the Imam had just completed his visit. The band was on stage that night, and I think there was a power cut for an hour.
Okay.
Now, obviously, the only instruments that don't rely on power are your drums and percussion.
Of course.
So for about 45 minutes or an hour, it was just drums and percussion, and the crowd just danced for an hour. Even our singers and keyboard and guitarists were on the floor. So, I guess, was that a tough environment? Yes, but a great one.
Yep. Like you said, you deal with what you can control.
Correct.
And leave the rest to the wayside.
What was in our control is we could just keep playing.
That's it.
Right?
That's it. And it sounds like people carried on having a great time. So wonderful, wonderful. Of course, Rahim, you're in quite a senior role as the head of the private bank at Barclays. How does your age affect, has it impacted your work? Has it impacted you on your journey to this point?
Look, I think it helps that I look really old. No, look, I mean, I'll be honest with you. No one's ever asked my age.
Okay. Not at any points during your career or?
No. So at no point, as far as I'm aware anyway, have I not been able to get a role or a job or get promoted because of my age.
Yeah.
And I genuinely believe that. I think age is an interesting thing. I think age is often viewed from the individual, right? Am I old enough?
Right.
Kind of view. I think one of the things as a community that we do really well is we are quite age agnostic. And I think for anyone, this is kind of going back to one of my, early influences. Because I spent so much time within the community, within the Jamaat serving, naturally my company was older than me, right? I was just following my parents around, right? But what happened in reality was the people that I was serving with were older than me.
Right.
So I think the transition then into the workplace where everyone is older than you or more senior than you was actually very, very natural. And I think the setting that we have, obviously when things are back to normal, but the setting that we have within our Jamaats is very much one of ages is relevant to a point.
Yeah.
But actually when you're serving, you're serving.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't actually matter at all.
It's not relevant. So look, age for me is not a big deal. I've never thought about it. As I said, no one's ever asked me my age. I don't even think people put their ages down on their CVs these days.
Yeah, it's not even a thing anymore.
You know, I don't use age when I hire. Yeah, age is just not relevant.
Yeah. And speaking of hiring, it would be really interesting to know how you build teams. What's your view on that? Whether it's age or what is your view on building a successful team?
So look, I've got two distinct views. One is I hire people just like me.
Okay.
That work really hard, that push boundaries, that overstep, that are hungry for growth and will work all the hours required to get things done.
Yeah.
And then I hire people completely opposite to me. Because what I want to build is the most rounded team or set of individuals that I can.
Right.
And hiring on the opposite end is super important, because then I get skills that I don't have. I get skills that would take me so long to learn and build myself that I would end up suffering elsewhere. So I build two distinct types of people around me.
Okay.
Those that are like me and those that are completely not like me.
Right. And it's almost like you get the best of both worlds, and that provides a sound foundation for success.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Also, we've talked a little bit earlier about pressure, but what about resilience in the sense of, dealing with disappointments? I'm sure, disappointments are very real. How do you handle disappointments?
So look, there's a practical way and a very impractical way, or less practical way. The practical way is focus on what you can control.
Okay.
And this has a number of elements, but firstly, focus on what you can control. Do everything you possibly can to get to the desired outcome. If you've done everything you possibly can and you still don't get the right outcome, then of course you'll be disappointed. But personally, I focus immediately on what's next.
Okay.
How do I prevent this from happening again? I think one of the reasons why people sense disappointment is often down to comparisons. And my view on this is, every minute, every hour someone spends on someone else's story is a minute or an hour lost on their own story. And they're spending a lot of time managing disappointment through that way. So I have a very, very firm view that I focus on my story, I focus on what I can control, and I'll drive outcomes. The less practical way is, whatever happens in life, it should be received with some sort of simplicity.
Okay.
Right? Whatever's meant is meant, and you may not understand it at the time. You may never understand it.
Yeah.
Right? But it was meant.
Yeah.
And you move on.
Yeah.
Today people take risks in life. They take job opportunities. They make decisions.
Yeah.
Often the outcomes or the consequences of those actions will not be realized for some time.
True.
But look, my focus is you control what you can control. Focus all of your time on what you can control.
What you can control. And it almost sounds like when you came to the philosophical side, it's almost like a trusting, right? This trusting that what happens, it happens. It's almost meant to be. And also this idea that when you plant the seed isn't when you see the tree, right? You maybe do something now that it will impact you in 10 years, vice versa.
Correct.
So everything has its timeline.
Correct.
I guess, right? So no, thank you. It's very, very interesting. And, it's safe to say as well, I think that we have a financial expert with us here today, as much as we'd like to own that or not, you have experience, a wealth of experience. And I'd love to tap into that a little bit and just, get your views on investing in the markets. Where do you stand with that?
So look, financial markets are financial markets. The view I have is quite simple. I think, as we prepare, and the Imam tells us a lot to be focused not on only what we achieve in our lifetime, but we should be setting up or laying the foundation for the generations to follow. Not just one generation, but maybe 2 or 3 generations.
Yeah.
So look, some sort of exposure to the financial markets is important. Finding ways to access them is important. I have a strong conviction that being invested, staying invested, and being diversified is really important. So finding ways to save, even if it's small amounts of money, but how that compounds over a 10, 20, 30-year period is really, really important. So I think finding ways and opportunities to have that kind of portfolio is important. And look, investments can be a mixture of things, right? It doesn't only have to be exposure to the financial markets. It's real estate, it's being homeowners, etc.
Yeah. So you're saying essentially be in the market rather than not in the market, and try to diversify if you can.
That's our view.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's always helpful. You know, sometimes we're not sure what the first step is. So it's always helpful, like you said, just to be in there. And I'm sure that we can learn more. We can always research
There's
and
lots
do
of
more.
material around.
Yeah. Yeah. And connect with you if possible, you know, if people
Absolutely.
can. Yeah. Now, in terms of, you know, one of the topics I think you've broached and which we broach in our community is this idea of traditional philanthropy versus the kind of newer idea or new trend of sustainable investing. Can you just give us some ideas or opinions on that?
Sustainability is a notion that's been well understood in our Jamaats for many years.
Okay.
Building for better, building for the future, increasing capacity and building community infrastructure has been part and parcel of what our Jamaat's been focused on for centuries. I think if you look at the mix of the activities led by the Imamate, while the market is talking about sustainable investing, I think we've been living it
Right. Right.
for decades, certainly through both our lifetimes anyway.
Absolutely.
So look, I think yes, this is an externalization of something that we've always had a strong focus on. And there are many ways of really getting involved. I think there's a lot of material out there now that wasn't available before. So I'd encourage people to take those steps and to get some exposure.
Yeah, perfect. Any other top tricks or top advice on investing or financial?
Stay invested, be invested, and be diversified.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Let's talk about COVID. You know, obviously it's a topic that we're all living in it. We're all being impacted by it on a daily basis, hourly basis even. Tell me how it's impacted your life.
So look, I think all of us are used to an on-demand life.
Correct.
Right? We do what we like when we want to do it, and how we like to do it. So if we want to get in our car and go somewhere, we go. You know, we're here today speaking from Dubai. Most people in Dubai have families and friends outside of Dubai.
Yeah.
Getting on planes is part and parcel of being here. There's a very real prospect now that you or I, if we wanted to go and visit our families in the UK, we may not be able to. This isn't a situation that we've ever considered even being potentially real, but it's very much real.
Yeah.
So I think this is definitely prompted readjustment. But for me personally, yes, that makes it a bit tough. I think for me though, the biggest thing is obviously we're at the Ismaili Centre, but the fact that we're closed for Jamaat Khana, is tough. That 30-40 minute time that you get where no one can disturb you, I miss a lot.
Yeah.
Of course we do things at home, but it's not the same. The congregational prayer, the fact that everyone is in Jamaat Khana to offer whatever they offer for that half an hour, 40 minutes is peaceful.
Yeah.
And not having that is tough. But look, I've been able to spend a lot of time with my family. Lockdowns have been great.
Yeah.
And we've spent some time that we would have never spent together.
Right. Opportunities have come out of that.
So that's great. And then if I think about it, actually, for something like this, people, I think now would not be able to fathom life without Ismaili TV.
Yes.
And if you look at the speed at which we went from having nothing to building stuff like this, and you think about the number of voluntary hours that have gone in behind the scenes to get this content, to get and this is quite it's a very professionally set out channel, and this has happened. I mean, it's suddenly manifested during COVID.
Yep.
Right. So there are some huge positives, I think, at the same time as while there's obviously a backdrop which is reasonably negative. I think there are some huge, real positives here.
Yeah, and that's as such in life, right? There's always positives and negatives from every aspect.
Yeah.
And we have to just kind of work with what we can and move forward accordingly. No, thank you so much for that. It's been actually really interesting getting to know you on a personal front, with your drumming and your passion for music, and also a professional front with what you've been doing at Barclays. And I thank you for sharing your story so far. What's next for you? What are your next goals, milestones? How are you planning to get there?
Again, I don't have a plan.
Okay.
You know, I'm young. I'm going to be working for another 30, 40 years,
Yeah.
I'd say. You know, my immediate goals are really to just be as relevant as I can be. These are tough times. And large organizations, small organizations, all organizations need people that want to do more.
Yes.
I'm one of those guys. I want to do more. And I want to be able to create something over the next decades that I'm going to be working for. So I'm focused on many things, not just one particular milestone.
Okay. And you mentioned being relevant. What does that mean to you? Staying relevant, being relevant.
So being, it kind of goes back to you know, what I was saying. You have to work out what your space is.
What's your space? Okay.
And deliver that space in a disproportionately valuable way.
Okay.
Right. So that doesn't mean, you know, you have to be more successful than others, or there's benchmarking or anything else. You know, the first and foremost view is you want everyone to be successful, right? Success isn't binary.
Of course.
One person isn't successful at the cost of someone else. Sure, if there are two really good people going for the same job, one person will get it, but they're two really good people,
right?
So they should still get two really good jobs,
right?
So you know, being you know, relevant is being in a place where you can focus, you can thrive. It's the right environment. You can build, you can learn, and you can ultimately execute. And the execution should have a positive bearing on your personal life and your community life also.
Yeah.
So finding that if you can find that combination, you're incredibly lucky.
Yeah.
Today I'm very lucky.
Blessed.
I'm in that space, and that's not my doing. There's a lot of people that have prayed for me for many years. There are many people that support me behind the scenes. Many people have bigger ambitions for me than I have for myself. I'm just realizing them.
Touch wood. And that's how it should be too, right? People around us, bringing us up, supporting us, and making us better. Correct, on a daily basis. Now, Rahim, any last words of advice or any pointers or words of wisdom for our viewers?
I'll just repeat one thing that I said, which is, you know, every minute or every hour that we spend following someone else's story is a minute or an hour lost on ours.
Yeah.
We can focus and we can control what we can control.
Yeah.
Let's spend time doing that and do it really, really, really well.
It's a beautiful way to, this idea of creating your own story and just focusing on that. What you can control, make your own story.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time today, Rahim.
Thank you, Jenna.
It's been a pleasure getting to know you, and I hope that we can, you know, always get to learn more from you and continue to share with the Jamaat worldwide.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.